Here we are between two sprints. I'm your host, Matt Thomas, joined by my co-host, fearless co-host, Adam Rolfe, aka Speed Farm, and our guest of honor today, Mr. Michael Drach. So here we are between two sprints visually on the screen. But Michael, here we are again a decade later from when I first shook your hand way back when. So
Way back then.
it's crazy how everything comes together. But thanks for joining us today. Tell everyone how you're doing and what you're up to, a brief little background, and then we will get into it.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Just been training athletes to get faster. Been doing it for over 20 years now, which is crazy to say. Man, I don't know if you guys know, but Matt was an intern way back in the day underneath the TC Boost world, and so when I used to work for them, and so kind of come full circle, Matt. So love to see where your role is now.
So Chicago to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and just absolutely exploding to the moon with the content and the training and and everything in between. So we'll start with kind of your background. You're an OG Sprint One guy, but take us through your kind of intro exposure. What was that process like? First, getting your hands on the sprint and kind of that first. If we broke your sprint exposure into like three phases, right? Kind of the
Yeah.
beginning when you're learning it, when you get dialed in, and then your super high level. Now, what was that kind of first third like when you first got your hands on it?
Well, and I'm going to go even further back and just go through all of the tools that we used to use. And,
Fantastic.
it was sleds. You did sled sprints. That's what everybody used for resistance sprints. And then the Exergini came out. I don't know if many people are familiar with Exergini, but that was like mind blowing for me. I was like, wait, I don't have to carry these plates everywhere. I don't have to, I can just change it with the dial and then, use the Exergini for years. And then when the Run Rocket came out, it was like, man, this is even better, And so, yeah, Run Rocket for years. And but then I started seeing the 1080 and the data and GPS stuff started coming out, and I just felt like I was falling behind in not the training, but like the knowledge of what's going on during the sprint. And I really was like, I gotta get my hands on 1080, and so I saved up and got that sprint one. And at first, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. At first, I didn't really use it every session, and I was just because it was like, I got to turn it on. I got to get the computer set up to it. I got it was like in the middle of a session. It was like too much to think about. And then I slowly started using it more and more, and then it quickly became like, okay, I'm using this for like acceleration. I'm using this for some overspeed stuff. I'm using this for change of direction. I'm gonna use this for the majority of my workout, and that's kind of like how I just kind of like it's just transformed the way I train, and it's made me a better trainer. Absolutely, understanding a little bit more what's going on during the sprint. But it's making the athletes just having feedback, instant feedback. Go back to the Run Rocket. I can have my athletes sprint as fast as they can, and I think they are. They think they maybe are, but we have no idea how fast they're moving. They have no idea like what metrics they're hitting, and so you can keep that going every rep, and you just see the intensity of these athletes increase. And it's a good lesson for the younger athletes to learn. Is like, I'm giving you a rest for a reason, so we can sprint fast. Give me higher intensity, and it's a good lesson for them to learn that. So that was my long-winded answer on my progression into the 1080.
Super interesting kind of compare and contrast. And what I like about that is you already had your kind of system philosophy. You'd already kind of messed around with all these different products. So you weren't starting with ground zero. You were more in the like optimization phase instead of the discovery phase,
Yeah.
So the next topic I kind of want to dive into is one of your kind of competitive edges as a coach is your kind of COD and agility work.
Yeah.
And that's one of the more underrated functions of the 1080 is obviously it's just easier to wrap your head around load and sprint, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So take us through kind of that COD kind of journey from just loading a handful of your few favorite drills to okay, cool, let's get some data and some output to like how the 1080 kind of helped evolve some of your COD stuff.
Yeah. I mean, way back early,
training a lot of slow athletes, and I had to figure out like, okay, what's the disconnect between this athlete that can cut really well and this athlete that is getting stuck. And it kind of forced me to like really think through what's going on there. And it's what we know now. It's the eccentric load of the athlete. And the athlete that can handle a faster eccentric load is going to be able to decelerate, change directions um, much more quickly. And so started using bungees a lot with that to load the athlete. Just doing simple cutting drills, maybe skater jumps, just training that not just the eccentric load, but the ability to go from eccentric to concentric. That amortization phase is what's so important. Um, because you could have a really, really good eccentric capability, but if you can't get that, I call it the spring, learn how to spring the body back out, that reversal phase, you're still not going to have the best change of direction. And so, once I started abandoning the bungees and using the 1080 for that, it was just, I mean, for one, it's just, I'll go from a 12-year-old athlete to a professional athlete. And so it's like, well, how before I had to add a bungee or move the bungee, stretch it longer. Now just with the touch of the button, I can be like, okay, let's try this load. Still feels kind of light. Let's try this load. And you can keep increasing the load as long as you still see that smooth transition from the eccentric concentric. And so, um, just the ability for the quick adjustments per athlete. Each hour I have a completely different athlete in there. Um, and so it's such an easy transition. To train athletes to change their direction. And then, you know, all the new research coming out on just, the deceleration part of it alone. That's one area I didn't touch a lot on, to be honest, was the decel part. I focus a lot on the last couple steps to change of direction. The penultimate and the final step is and it still is my biggest focus. But just seeing all the new research on using the 1080 for deceleration the last couple of years has really gotten me to dive into that a little bit more. And it's been so transformational for my athletes.
Michael, what kind of loads are we talking about for like a beginner that you would start them on? And then where would you go for like some of your NFL guys or that have some training aids that have been working
Yeah,
with you a while? You know,
yeah.
Get
I
people
mean,
learning. It came up in our webinar the other day that we did, and it's a really hot topic of like how do you know to dial it in?
yeah. I mean, I've always been probably on the lighter side, in my training. Um, Even if you're going back to the days of acceleration, like as soon as I got the 1080 and started diving into like the 50%, drop in velocity, I was like, holy cow, that is heavy. And so I was like, I probably have been, keeping something away from my athletes for years by not exposing them to that heavy of resistance. But for change of direction, if I got a young athlete who I'm just starting off to teach, I'll put it on maybe 3.5, 4 kilograms. Um, let's say now a little, high school athlete, maybe a female high school athlete, I'll start on 5. And if they can't handle it, I'll go down. If they can, I'll go up, I'll go up just 1 kilogram and just see how they handle it. And I'll be honest, it wasn't until maybe this past summer I was training Zayvon Collins, Arizona linebacker, and they had the 1080s over there with Buddy Morris. And so I was kind of just, we're following Buddy's program. And Zayvon's like, okay, I'm going to do 60 kilo one step decels. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, that's what my load is. I'm like, no. I was like, I don't feel comfortable as a trainer. I was like exposing you to that much. And he's like, no, trust me. Just stand by the machine with your hand ready to hit the stop button in case I fall. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me, Xavier. He's like, no, just trust me. And so, yeah, he did it and he nailed it. And so I was like, that gave me a little more confidence. Now I'm not doing 60 kilos with my athletes. Xavier is a monster. He's 6'5", 270, and he's strong as an ox and fast. But they gave me a little more confidence, like, hey, maybe this high school athlete can go, you know, 10 kilogram change of direction, 15 kilogram change of direction. And if they handle it well, it's probably completely safe for them. And so it gave me a little more confidence to like start ramping it up with my athletes a little bit more. And they have been transitioning really well to go into that little heavier of the change of direction.
It's funny how Adam mentioned we recently got a question of that, and I posted on our social media today from Jan Seiler, our Swiss mad scientist, I call him, where similar to how it's your philosophy. It's the amortization phase. It's these change from eccentric to concentric.
Hmm.
Only bumps it up as they can handle the concentric, right? Because these
Yeah.
athletic explosive movements,
Yeah.
you still want it to be athletic and explosive. So like, there's nothing wrong with being a little bit more conservative and making sure it looks good.
Hmm.
Or the heavy isn't like if your justification is just because I want something to feel heavy, that's probably not the best place to go, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So my next question is because it's a motor, we can control each phase independently.
Hmm.
Have you messed around with eccentric overload or having a different load going in on the eccentric and then getting a little bit lighter coming out, making it challenging exactly what you want?
Yeah.
Higher braking forces in, but then more explosive on the way out.
I've done it a little bit, but not a lot. And so that's definitely something I want to play around with a little bit more. Yeah, right now I'm doing the same, mostly the same eccentric load and concentric load coming in and out. But yeah, if I want to overload the eccentric, if that's where I feel they're deficient, that's something definitely I will play around with. Um, but yeah, you're right on that. Like the deceleration is eccentric load. The change of the direction is the ability to shift from eccentric to concentric. And so that needs to be a smooth, um, it's the same way I teach some of my plyos, the deeper plyos. It's a smooth spring back out. There should not be a disconnect. And so, yeah, you can definitely, that might be a good way to train it is go a little heavier eccentric, lighter concentric. That might be an easier way from the transition, but something I want to play around with more.
Michael, one of the things that you experience, and you're a private trainer. You
Yeah.
live and die by the athletes that come in and making a
Yep.
name for yourself and make sure that they get better, which is different than some of our team sport guys, right? Of course. But my question for you is you made the investment. You said at the beginning, like you went and bought a 1080 Sprint, and then now you've upgraded that to the 1080 Sprint 2. Can you talk to the people a little bit about why you made that investment, besides just not wanting to get behind, but how
Hmm.
that return on investment has played out for you?
Yeah, I bought it right before I moved to Tulsa. So I knew I wanted to move to Tulsa. I had very little connections here. Um, I had a good business going on in Chicago. I had, a waiting list of people to come train with me. And so I was never worried about getting people in the door. But then I was like, I have zero clients going to Tulsa. I need to get clients fast. And I was like, I think having I think at the time it was the only 1080 in Oklahoma.
Yep.
I think maybe OU track had one at the time. I can't remember, but I knew that would help me grow the business. And so, football here is huge in Oklahoma. Not as big as Texas, but it's big. And each school has a really good strength coach, and they do sprint programs. And so I knew I needed something that's going to like not just get people in the door, but like really pique their interest while they're training. And the 1080 was huge for that. As soon as someone got in the door and they did one session with me, and I explained, what their sprint looked like on the 1080, each step looks like the force, the speed, they were in, they were sold. It was such an easy, sell for the athlete. Like they were bought in, and this is something different that I'm not going to get anywhere. And yeah, business side, it's been really big to help me grow my business, get back up to speed here in Oklahoma.
So along those same lines, it's easy to sell to the athlete, partly because they'll actually be training on it, right?
Yep.
But also part of the private side is that, 10, 15-minute conversation after the initial eval, kind of with the parents and whatnot.
Yeah.
So as like it's this dance of like, right? Like if you want in, like I'm the best, but you also have to explain it, but you're not, it's a weird line. So when you're explaining like why you are the best, right? And the 1080 comes up, like how do you explain it to a parent or someone who isn't in it, right? So that
Yeah.
the other side of the equation being the private side.
Yeah. I mean, just you talking about like explaining like why this will be beneficial for their kid.
Yeah, why you having the only one in Oklahoma is a competitive edge to someone who doesn't train or have a background in it or.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it goes into, you know, with my first session with the athlete, I'm not just throwing them on the 1080 and having them sprint. I'm doing a deep dive into their acceleration mechanics, their top speed mechanics. So me like pointing out to the parent, okay, hey, this is where they're lacking in their first step. This is where, they're stabbing at the ground. They have really poor horizontal force. And so like the 1080 is going to give us some really good feedback day to day. But we got to fix the mechanics. So I think it's the two together that's really been able to sell the parents like, okay, they're not getting this in the high school setting. There's gas in them, running sprints. Here they're actually going to work on their mechanics and horizontal force and where their force leaks are and all that kind of stuff.
So it's combining it with the, "Hey, this is what I see with my coach's eye," and the
Hmm.
human piece. "Oh, cool, the data backs that up. Oh, by the way, we're gonna be using this literally every single training session."
Yep.
It's not this standalone thing, obviously, like, it's a motor and a line, right?
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
tablet, so cool kinda explanation, kinda bringing it all together, and last kind of section of this pod, you reference decel or the braking phase specifically, as Damien Harper breaks it down, kind of braking and the cutting phase, which you
Hmm.
you spoke on more. What are you most curious in? Maybe explain a little bit more about the decel phase and some of your first kind of ideas. But moving forwards, you have this tool. You've been using it for a while, but I always describe it's like every year users get better at using it. So
Yeah.
what's most interesting to you? Do you have a game plan for 26? But let's talk about moving forwards. What what excites you?
Definitely the diving more into the decel, change of direction, doing heavier loads, but I've been doing a little bit more and more of overspeed. And that is something that I had been fearful to do over the years. I think it was because early on, we had some guys that were training for their pro day doing overspeed, and they hurt their hamstring. We were using bungees back then, so we couldn't really control. And so I just got so scared to ever do overspeed. But I've been doing more and more with it with the 1080, and it's such a controlled speed because you can set the exact speed that you want them to hit their the pole, and they've been responding so well to it. And so I really want to start doing it more and more, and even going to play around with it with some of my younger athletes. Like, as long as I know the mechanics are good, I'm going to put 3 kilograms on them and have them do some max flies with it. And they are going to respond really well to it. It's just teaching the nervous system that they can move faster. And that's one thing I want to do with more of my athletes. Right now, I only have a couple select that I will do it with, but I want to start playing around with it with more and more and more of my athletes. Because I think max velocity is the hardest thing to improve. Yeah, you get younger athletes that it's a low hanging fruit, fix their mechanics and you have them do some max sprints and they're going to get faster. That's true. But it is still, I think, some of the hardest, one of the hardest things to improve with athletes is that max velocity. And so change of direction, acceleration is a lot easier to get results. And so always looking for new ways to maximize the max velocity.
Fantastic. So that wraps us up for today. I'm sure I could keep going, but Adam will pull me off stage. So I want to say thank you very much for your time today. And now I will roll out the red carpet, or maybe for today, the yellow carpet, to shamelessly plug, emphasis on shameless, what you got going on, things to keep our eye out for in 26, and where can people get more of Coach Drach?
Yeah. Okay, so I got two things that are going right now. One is I'm doing video mechanics analysis. So people around the world that want me to take a look at their athlete, whether it's acceleration, max velocity, change of direction mechanics, using the View Motion app, and they do a Zoom call with me. We break it down, and then if they want, I'm offering a custom build program where they have full access to me through the whole program. So it's a little higher end product. Um, but they can text me, call me, Zoom me, send me messages. I'll respond to them throughout the duration of the program. That's one that's for the athletes. The next thing is for trainers, coaches, PTs, athletic trainers. This is going to come out, I hope, by the end of January. It is the agility protocol. And so it is a course on my philosophy and how to do change of direction and agility. Is it the only way to do it? No, but it's a way that I've developed over my 20 years that has worked really well. And it's kind of breaking down, like we talked about earlier, the final step, the penultimate step, the deceleration in how to load, um, how to improve the eccentric loads of that. But it's more of a dive into the mechanics, how to progress each thing. Whether you want your foot in this position or this position, knee here, like it's a deep dive into like the fine details of what I coach my athletes. And so hopefully that comes out at the end of January. So be on the lookout for that.
All right. And then what's your IG?
At Drach Performance.
Fantastic. So give him a follow. Reach out if you have any questions. Michael, Adam, thank you very much. And looking forward to connecting next.
All right. Thanks, guys.